another edition of It's All Relative. I'm Josh.
And I'm Angela.
And today, we're taking a look back on a decade that ushered in essential reforms in music, style, attitude, and words such as Gen X, goth, grunge, DVD. A time of relative peace and prosperity that is often referred to as simply the 90s. Hopefully you, the listener, will be able to reminisce as we discuss this golden era. So you already know what to do. Turn it up and let's get it rolling with an all-new episode right here on the It's All Relative podcast. Angela, as always, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Always. What's good with you? What's new?
Same. You know, school's getting ready to close, trying to find camps for the kids, bunch of baloney.
Right on. Summer camps. You send the kids away?
No, I wish. Day camps, really. Just while I'm working.
Right on.
Pay a babysitter, pay camp.
Mm-hmm. Did you, when you were a kid, did you grow up going to camps?
We didn't have day camps, or if we did, I never went to them.
Or sleepaway camps?
I did a sleepaway camp, actually. As the Girl Scout camps, you didn't have to be a Girl Scout. But I had so much fun. I used to go away for 2 weeks, camp, come back. It was great just to be away from my family. And I had a big family, so it was nice to get away.
Right on. I myself too, when I was a young kid, I used to go to sleepaway camps. Often they were usually basketball camps, but I actually enjoyed those, and they were always up in places that I enjoyed being, which is up north from where we're at, up in the Adirondacks.
Nice.
Yeah, but I don't know what else is going on. Before we get into it, let me ask you real quick. Netflix. There's a show that I've been watching. I want to know if you've heard of it or if you've watched anything, any of it. But it's called Beef.
Heard of it? I have not watched it yet.
Okay.
You started watching it?
I did. I'm about finished with it. So there's only 10 episodes. I was turned on to this show because I had heard a lot about it from many different people in the celebrity world, I guess, right?
Okay.
It came up often in many conversations, and it was referred to whatever by them and whatnot. So I decided to start watching it, and I since you haven't seen it, I don't want to ruin it. I would recommend to.
I'm not one of those people that are like, spoiler alert. If it sounds good, I'm gonna watch it anyway. Okay.
I would recommend to anyone who hasn't seen it to watch it. It's crazy. It shows how things, how a chain of events quickly spiral out of control over one incident of road rage. And it sounds weird, right? Like, when you hear that, you're like, I can't see it or I don't understand it, but.
Well, I actually looked when I don't know, somebody told me about it too. So when I looked at it, I kind of just read each episode's caption. Mm-hmm. So I have like a little idea of what it's about, I guess. Mm-hmm. It did sound interesting, though. It's
pretty cool. Like I said, I would highly recommend it. The main actor, I forgot his name, but he's the guy that played in The Walking Dead as well. But it's a very, I don't know. It's crazy. It's a crazy portrayal, like I said, of how things just spiral out of control over one incident. But with that being said, I understand. I don't agree with some of the things, that may have happened in the show, but I understand people's breaking points, and we can leave it at that. You know what I'm saying? So
everybody has one.
But either way, if you haven't seen it or haven't watched it, I would say to anyone and any listeners out there, watch it. Let me know. Let us know if you like it, if it was worth your time. If not, you can tell me that it sucked, That's cool. But Before we take a trip down memory lane, a few more questions for you, Angela.
Oh no.
And if the listeners want to answer for themselves, or post their answers on social media page for the episode, feel free to do so. I'll share my answers as well. And let's get it going. First question. What's one thing that you currently or at one point in time collected?
Rocks.
Okay.
Seashells.
Okay. You want to expand a little. Rocks. What kind? Why? Or any rock?
Really, any rock that is appealing to me. I like crystals per se, but you don't find them often. I have found rocks with amber in it, rocks with jade in it, quartz, pretty rocks.
All sizes. Excuse me. All right.
I mean, I try to stick to the smaller ones because, finding the bigger rocks is hard if you're walking. Mm-hmm. You got to carry them back and stuff, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. You also mentioned seashells.
I like to collect seashells.
That's pretty cool. As do I. I'm a big fan of the beach. I love the ocean.
Agreed.
It's one thing that I envy about those people who are lucky enough to be, next to or live next to a beach or on a beach. I've always said you could always walk out your door and either walk left or right every day and see some new shit. You know what I'm saying? Actually, if you look right over there, that little container over there with those seashells, that's filled with all seashells from the Outer Banks. So every time we would go find seashells and bring them back. And
you keep them separated, like places?
Yeah, I mean, we don't, I guess, really collect seashells often. There's a lot of other things, that I collect. Others, I mean, I'll just mention them real quick too. I mean, but for those that don't, I collect. One of the things that I collect are the M&M candy toy dispensers. I currently have. There aren't too many that I don't have anymore. I'm always looking for ones. I know there are a few, but I currently have 32. These are very applicable, to today's, I guess, episode too, because I mean these toys, which essentially they were toys, were made in the 90s, and that's when that was actually when I got my first one. So which I still have to this day, which kind of sparked the whole collection thing. It was cool. Like I remember when I first got them, I had two, and I remember actually putting M&Ms and shit in them, and like I would have friends over for sleepovers and whatnot, and everyone would always go over to the M&M, crank the arm, little M&Ms come out, pop a few.
Yeah, I'm surprised you don't have a few working dispensers. I was kind of looking for an M&M earlier.
Yeah, no. They are not to be touched or played with. No, just kidding. But no, really, they just those are an item that I collect. But let's move on real quick. Let me ask you, what's one country that you'd like to visit that you've never been to before,
Italy.
And why? You've never been to Italy?
I've never been to Italy.
Okay, and why?
Just because it's kind of my heritage.
Right on.
My dad's side.
Any specific part?
Northern. Not exactly sure where, but I mean, I'd like to visit it all, but gotta be realistic.
Mm-hmm. You know how much flights are right now from New York to Italy?
Do you?
I'm asking you.
No, I do not.
All right.
I thought maybe you knew of a deal I didn't know about, and I should be jumping on it.
No, but right on. For me, one place that I would like to maybe, if I ever had the opportunity to visit in my lifetime, I would like to visit Switzerland.
That's a good one.
Yeah, everything that I've always seen about the country, it just looks so. I don't know.
Beautiful.
It's a good vibe. It's beautiful. It's peaceful. Beautiful. Like the pictures that I've seen in like the evenings. Even though I'm not a big fan of snow, but like some of these snow-covered mountain residences or towns, that shit looks beautiful. You know what I'm saying? And
sunset glistening on it.
yeah, it looks like a good place. But all right, let me ask you one thing or item that you've used daily for 3+ years or more.
Like, meaning like what? Like any object? Like anything? Like a hairbrush?
Sure, I mean, you could say that. I was thinking of something maybe. I mean, I mean, if that's the first thing that came to your mind and you use that, that's cool.
Something that besides like see my phone, but I can't say I've used that every single day because I do forget it a lot.
Well, I'll answer because somebody asked me that question a while ago, and like,
it's a random question.
Yeah, but when I thought about it and whatnot, I felt like one sufficient answer for myself would be my bong. So
what was the how long?
I said 3 years plus, just because I didn't want to say 5 or 10 and then really expose how long I've used that on the daily. So that's why I kept it at 3. But
I quit twice in my life.
Quit what?
Smoking.
Smoking? For pregnancy reasons?
One of them was, yeah.
Okay, right on. You want to share what the other one was, or no? Not really?
Not really, no.
Okay, cool.
Legal
Right on.
purposes.
Enough said. All right, last question. What's one song that always reminds you of the 90s? Like when you hear a song, brings you immediately back.
That Oasis song.
Wonderwall?
Yeah. That would bring me right back to the 90s because that was really the only time I listened to it.
No, it was a huge hit in the 90s. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Mine, I would have said mine was Nirvana, Smells Like Teen Spirit. Immediately think of the 90s and the grunge era and Kurt Cobain. But I mean,
like I still listen to that music today sometimes. So
as do I. We'll definitely shift into some of the music. But I mean, let's continue to roll with that then. The 90s. I mean, what emotions or thoughts go through your head when you hear that?
Oh, the 90s. I don't know. I was a teenager and I feel like things were good.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have a lot of worries and I was just focused on being a teenager, honestly.
No, right on. I mean, I think that's so funny that you had kind of defined it like that because I was a little younger during the 90s. But, I mean, I have a similar feeling that it was a time of no worries and feeling free because there was no responsibilities. You know what I'm saying? I felt like where I was at in that stage of life, I was still learning and seeing life in general, pretty much like for the first time. You know what I'm saying? And trying to absorb what's going on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? What's give me your opinion then of the decade of the 90s. What do you?
My honest opinion is it was the best decade, but it was good. I don't know. It was a good one. I think it was a time where we were so outside doing things, not on phones and computers, and it was just different. It was a different world back then.
Absolutely. I thought about that same thing too when I was thinking about that question. I was trying to think back, like what do you feel or what do I feel or what do I think of when someone mentions the 90s or a time in the 90s? and I don't know, I'm immediately brought back to my childhood yard, being outside on a sunny day, playing with toys,
riding our bikes,
being outside, loving it, not worrying about a damn thing, you know what I'm saying? And like, that's those were good times, happy times, you know what I'm saying? Times that you always wish you could go back and relive. But I think that's why the 90s is so nostalgic. It's such a nostalgic time for many. So those of us who this applies to, I feel like that we chase the nostalgia with items that bring us back. You know what I'm saying? I.e. for myself, the
M&M's.
Exactly. But I know you did mention, but real quickly, one more time, around what stage of life were you at in the 90s?
91, I was 13.
13? Okay.
I want to say about to turn 13 or just turned 13.
Okay.
So, 91, I was starting to be a teenager and
right on.
had my first job. Actually, I had my first job at 12, but...
Did you? What was it?
I was working on a horse farm. I wanted riding lessons.
Mm-hmm.
I've always wanted riding lessons. We couldn't afford it. So my father, he was a carpenter. He built a lot of houses, barns, that kind of thing.
Good for him.
So he hooked me up with this woman, and I would, every Friday, I would work after school, and then Saturday I'd get my free riding lesson. So I'd work for my riding lesson.
That's awesome. What would you do? Clean up horse shit?
Yep, pretty much. Clean stalls, groom the horses.
Nice. But you enjoyed being around them?
I did.
Okay.
I liked it. Yeah.
That's cool.
And then, shortly after that, I would work after school, $6 an hour, cash at the end of the week. That was nice.
Yeah.
What I did with the money, I don't know.
Right. Did you ever fall off a horse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My own horse when I was an adult. Yeah.
You owned a horse?
I had two, yeah.
What the hell? I never knew that.
Yeah.
Where'd you store them or keep them?
So my ex-husband, when I started dating him, his father had a horse farm, a boarding horse farm, like a boarding facility.
Uh-huh.
And so people that didn't pay abandoned their horses. And so he was like, hey, you want a horse? I was like, hell yeah, I want a horse. That was the first one. And the second one that got abandoned, I started to ride. The first one was not really rideable. The second one was.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. I've actually just recently learned. I actually have a few co-workers that own horses, and I've heard that they are a very expensive animal to own.
Yes, they are, and a very expensive animal to learn how to ride. Like both of my kids want to learn how to ride now because they just really want to. And it's so expensive. It's like $50, and that's being nice for like a lesson. And then of course I have two kids, so of course I have to double everything.
Right. All right on.
It's expensive, but it's very rewarding.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. What comes to mind? Give me something. What's one item or thing that you think of when someone mentions the 90s?
Tamagotchis. And a Walkman. Yeah.
I remember those.
I had a little pink Walkman, like pinkish purple. It's like lilac-y color.
Mm-hmm.
Some people call it pink. Some people call it purple.
So, I mean, this may sound a little awkward or weird to us, but I mean, for those listeners who may not know what you're talking about, like what a Walkman is, why don't you break that down real quick?
So it's this little box.
Mm-hmm.
Back in my day, we had cassette tapes, and you'd put the cassette tape in the Walkman with your little headphones, battery operated.
Mm-hmm.
take it on field trips, take it pretty much wherever you want to go, wherever you want to listen to music. And then they came out with the CD player, the Discman.
Absolutely. Let's keep rolling with that then. Let's roll with this category because I did want to mention what you just did, the portable CD players. I myself too did own a Walkman. Actually, I think the Walkman was actually my mother's. So I remember actually owning for myself was I remember my first portable CD player. Excuse me. And that thing was big. And did you own one? Did you?
I did, but so I come from a very big family, and I'm youngest. Like me, and my little brother are the two youngest, so we always got hand-me-downs.
So by the time I got to you, that shit was busted.
Skipping like a mother. It was terrible.
That's funny. No, I was going to mention that because the Discmen themselves, it was such an awesome theory to be able to pop a CD in there and then do what you do. But the only problem was that if you hooked that onto yourself or carried it when you were walking or anything, it would skip.
Yeah.
So you would never be able to get through a full song.
Just sit there holding it in your hand steady.
It was one of the most frustrating things ever. And I remember, that brings me back. But let's stick with a few more electronics and communications. Let me go down a little list, and if you think of any, or if you remember any specific electronics that come to mind, or anything, by all means, jump in. But email becomes popular in the 90s. I.e. Hotmail.
AOL.
Is created, exactly. AOL with...
Beep, boop, boop. I can't even do the sound. It was so friggin' annoying.
Yeah.
And it took forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You couldn't... I know if you were on the internet...
You couldn't
use the phone.
Yep.
Because the house phone was being used by the internet.
I didn't really have internet in my house for like... a real long time.
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't really know when I got it in my house. Like in my house.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember. I was young, so I think it was fairly newish when we had gotten it though too. So it wasn't too late. But I remember. You remember like the instant messaging and buddy lists and that was like AOL.
That was AOL, yeah.
What else? Pagers. Did you own a pager?
I did.
Yeah, pagers were the thing.
Pagers were. I can't believe. Yeah, that was. Yeah. Those things. Yeah, I remember. What people?
If people don't know what pagers were, there was a very small little box that you would wear on your hip or in your pocket, and
somebody wanted to get a hold of you. They beeped you with their phone number, right?
Yeah.
Remember that, right?
And you would have to
call them back.
Look at that beeper and see the number, and you'd have to go find a phone.
Find a pay phone.
Yeah.
I remember buying marijuana, like buying weed back in the 90s.
By using pagers?
Yeah. We'd page you'd page your guy.
Yeah.
He'd have you go to a certain pay phone, call you there.
Yeah.
It's like, go to a certain pay phone, page me. I'll call you back. And,
right on.
Kids don't know how lucky they have it now.
I know the amount of steps I feel like to have to accomplish one task. Yes. It was, there were a lot back then. Everything seems so easy now. But, what about, I know later on, in the 90s, we were introduced to cell phones.
Very
box.
late 90s, yeah.
Yeah, box cell phones. Like they were a lot different than they are today.
Well, I remember in the late 90s, I was dating this guy, and he always had, like, top-notch shit. You know, everything had to be perfect, you know, bougie.
I relate.
Sorry.
You good?
So anyway, he always had a nice phone. He had a nice phone, but it was much more modern than the box ones.
Okay. Like, was it one of those Nokias?
Motorola, maybe?
Okay.
Was that out then? It might have been. It was.
Yeah, that was
He was one of the first ones that I've ever known, like, with a flip phone. And that was, like, I'm talking, like, between 98 and 2000. Something like 98, 99.
Yeah, I remember the ones even before the flip phone.
Yeah,
like
they
those
look like friggin', they were so big.
bricks.
Yeah. They were like the ones you see in movies now.
Yeah. What about videotapes and like video cassette recorders? You remember those, like VHSs?
Oh my God, yes. And the funny thing is that we were cleaning out my mom's house, and me and my kids, and we found a whole bunch that we're going to go through. So my dad got a video recorder back in, I want to say, like the early 90s, maybe when I was like 12. So maybe like 1990, 91. So the early 90s. So he was obsessive about video recording. Random shit, which is really cool because, like, now as an adult, you know, I'm 44 years old, you know, and me and my kids sit down and we watch it. It's kind of funny to see me, you know, as a kid, you know, my brothers as teenagers, and like, it's just weird. It's crazy.
Absolutely. The original form of streaming, of what we do, what the world does now. I mean, I do want to touch through, we will touch throughout the entire show. There will be similarities of the whole 90s trend, dealing with everything when it comes to any category that you want to hit, where you see those currently now. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, we'll talk more about that later. But I mean,
my brother and I used to make videos. Like concerts, like pretend concerts. We'd like lip sync to like certain music.
Gotcha. Pretend playing
and video record it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like many kids in the 90s did that shit.
Yeah, like I'm dying to come across. Or like video, like if you didn't have a recording video, have you ever like taped over that little tab? On like, if say you have a movie you don't like, you could, there's a tab and you tape over it, you can record over that.
Really?
Have you ever done that?
Nah. Good
new.
tip there, Angela. All right, let's move on a little. Let's shift it to the culture. All right. What comes to mind when you think of or hear of 90s culture? Let's go back.
I don't know. It's kind of like I guess, grunge skater. I always considered like the skater group when I was in high school. Right.
I mean, you pretty much are correct. I mean, during the 90s, the culture, tattoos and body piercings, they began to gain more popularity.
Yeah, I remember going and looking at a tattoo at 17.
Lots of chicks, or excuse me, I shouldn't say that. I have a problem with saying that. Lots of women, or actually, people in general would get belly button piercings. It was a big thing.
I did that in school.
It was huge, yeah.
It was terrible. I mean, for me.
Why?
Because I just did it in the library, all right, willy-nilly, stuck a needle through my fucking belly button.
Did you really?
Yeah, bled a bit.
How painful was that?
It was pretty painful.
Were you able to successfully wear
It did not last long.
No. I don't have many piercings, but my piercings that I have, they were all done by myself or at home with the help of somebody else, you know. Oh, actually, no, I forgot. I'm sorry. Sometimes I forget about my nose. That's a huge story. I don't know if I've ever told you that story.
No.
I don't know. That's totally down a different track. I don't know. But essentially, my nose nose piercing had something to do with jury duty and eventually getting out of jury duty. It was a long thing, and then having to get it redone because it was a whole ordeal. But now successfully been in. I think it's been over a year. But I'm scared to death to take it out because I'm scared to get it back in, or that I won't be able to get it back in.
Well,
and I wanted to change it.
Is there on a nose ring?
No, not this. It's it's like a hook. So that's why I have trouble, because I'm so used to the straight bar that goes in through other parts of the body. You know what I'm saying? It's straight.
It's universal.
Yes, this goes in at an angle, and for some reason I can't, in like my mind, I can't see it. So like when I was trying to get it in, I could not get that fucker in, man. But
tongue piercings were big.
They were very big. They were fun.
You know your tongue pierced, do you?
I do not. No. Let's go to let's move on to some of the quote unquote retro styles from 60s and 70s, which now I think we're
back again.
Yeah,
it was like my kids picking out clothes that I would have picked out in the 90s.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, which was stuff from the 70s.
That's what I'm saying. Now, back in the 90s, you remember Jinko jeans.
Jinko jeans, they were the bomb, yeah.
The huge bottoms. But, I mean, they were classic because everybody owned a pair of Jinko jeans.
Yeah, at least one.
Now, the crazy shit is I recently saw there's a basketball player. He's a rookie, or he was a rookie. He's a young guy, but he was just on a cover of. He had a photo shoot, and he was on a cover of a Slam magazine. And the outfit, when I saw the pictures, I was baffled because he's wearing his basketball jersey, and then he's wearing a pair of, like, I don't know if they were Jinko jeans, but they looked exactly like Jinko jeans, like huge ass bottoms, everything, and it looked.
But they fit so comfortably.
It looked so weird to see that again. Like, because I mean, I owned a lot of those as a kid. I loved those. You know what I'm saying? And just to see that now, like, if that comes back, I don't know. Like,
it's funny because after Halloween of last year, I had decided that for next year I wanted to go as the 90s. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, I need to get a pair of Jinko jeans. That was like top of my list. And I'm like, I called my brother. I'm like, can we still get these? But then, like, I noticed the 90s kind of came back. So now it's kind of.
Yeah, it's coming back. What about, you remember ball chains? Ball chains that for necklaces.
I remember, like, the chain wallets and stuff.
Oh, I remember those too.
Like ball chains, like
they were like the little ball things that like you'd wear as
like
a necklace.
You would find like on the lamp there, like that.
Yeah.
Like dog tags would be on them.
No, these were bigger. No, it was more. So
maybe not really remember that so much.
What about I mean, this was huge in the 90s, and obviously is being seen everywhere nowadays is high top fades on guys. You remember slap bracelets?
Yep.
What about jelly shoes?
I remember the jelly shoes, but I remember the jelly shoes from the 80s more.
Okay.
Like, maybe my things are messed up, but I used to love jelly shoes, but I remember being really little for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it was maybe late 80s, maybe early 90s. I don't know, but
maybe. But I remember I loved jelly shoes. Those were the coolest, most comfortable. I don't even know why they were comfortable. They were literally plastic, jelly-ish.
Yeah. horrible. 'Cause I believe
Like flexible plastic.
I remember those because my sister had a pair or two of those, and I just always remember them. But you know, you can't mention the 90s without mentioning you know, certain video games. They were huge during the 90s. PlayStation was huge.
Oh, the PlayStation, yeah.
Nintendo 64 was a new thing that was a huge thing for me in my life. And then a Sega Dreamcast. You did say, you kind of mentioned something when I had mentioned PlayStation. Did you, out of those three?
Out of those three, we had the PlayStation with a regular Nintendo, obviously, but we didn't have money. Like I said, we were a big family. Most of our stuff was hand-me-downs.
Right, it's tough.
So we had that, and then we did get the PlayStation 1.
You remember any famous video games from back in the 90s? I shouldn't say famous, but you remember titles or the names of many games?
Oh, we used to play like Tomb Raider.
Good job.
I had Spyro the Dragon. I don't know why I love that one so much. I defeated it like twice. There was another. Was that Tomb Raider? Was there another one like Tomb Raider? I don't think it was Tomb Raider.
I don't know. So, some of the most popular games in the 90s, you had Gran Turismo. Let me know if you've heard of any of these.
Yeah.
But Gran Turismo, Super Mario Kart,
yeah,
Street Fighter, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Oh, yeah, we had that one. I still have that one, actually.
Do you really?
Yeah, for Wii.
That's awesome. I used to have that game for the Nintendo 64, I believe. And, or... maybe it was before that. Was it?
And there was like
Sega?
snowmobile games and stuff that were like that.
Yeah, there was. I know there was one game that was real big for me with the Nintendo 64 was Wave Race, where it was like a game that you had like jet skis and shit like that. But there was Sonic the Hedgehog, of course, which was a huge 90s thing. Quake, Final Fantasy VII, Legend of Zelda, and Super Mario 64. You did mention Tomb Raider, which was a huge hit in the 90s.
Didn't they make a movie out of it or something?
They did. They made Resident Evil was also a huge game.
That was the one.
Yeah.
Was that the one with the little skeleton guy walking around? Or was that Tomb Raider? I'm
I
very
don't
confused
know.
right now. But I used to love that game.
Yeah, either way, Resident Evil was a big hit back in the 90s, and they made that into a franchise of movies as well. But,
Truth be told, I got rid of my PlayStation. Well, maybe not the first one I had, but like my PlayStation only a couple years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Why'd you get rid of it?
It wasn't in the best condition, and I forget. And I gave it to my nephew, and then when I wanted it back, he had something happen. I don't know. He gave it away or something. But
all right. We're gonna take a quick break.
Sounds good.
Before we go, you anything else that you want to mention real quick?
Nothing. I can't wait till we get back.
All right, cool. So all right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll continue to discuss and explain more categories of what made the 90s so special, as well as talk about how 90s everything is affecting current life trends. So make sure you come back with us right here on the It's All Relative podcast.
Boom in the game now, shit's the same now. Explode next mode, I'm the same how. Don't say you know me, just say you did. When you see me sliding off to another crib. Boom in the game now, I'm the same how. The rap game will never be the same now. Don't say you know me, just say you did. And when you hear Y.O, say that's that shit.
Welcome back to It's All Relative. Still with me in studio, Angela Galente.
Hey.
All right, let's continue with some of these 90s memories. Let's move on to some classic, well, I wouldn't say classic, but let's talk about some films and movies. What can you think of any films and movies that bring you back to the 90s?
There's Something About Mary.
Great choice.
Big Daddy.
Great choice. That was a good one.
The Wedding Singer.
Right on. Let me go down the list. I'm sure you've heard all of these, but Titanic.
That was the 90s.
Yes, that was.
Titanic.
Goodfellas.
Well, that was a great one.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite movies of all time.
I love that one.
Pulp Fiction.
Oh, God, another great one.
Fargo.
Yep.
Casper.
The Friendly Ghost.
Space Jam, the original with Michael Jordan, not the new garbage with LeBron. And Men in Black. Do you remember? I mean, all these movies impacted me. Those were ones that stood out. What about, can you think of any animated films or movies? There were tons back in the 90s.
Animated ones? Like
cartoon
Super
ones.
Mario. Was that an animated?
Yeah, but that wasn't in the 90s, was it? But yes, that's...
There was one in the 90s.
I lost my train of thought for a second. Animated films and movies. But I guess the Super Mario Brothers. What about Ants? You seen it?
Yeah.
Kids seen it?
That was a good movie. I actually liked that one.
See? There you go. Prince of Egypt.
Yep. I don't think I remember that one so much, but...
Toy Story.
Love that one. The first one?
Yeah.
90s?
Yeah. Classic, man. I remember that. I used to love watching that movie.
I still watch that movie with
So
my
do I.
kids.
It brings me back. The Pizza Planet was something different, man. Like I felt like that would have been such a cool place.
That would have been an awesome place.
Right. Little Mermaid, which is very ironic because the new Little Mermaid movie has just been released and
The
is doing
original
well.
cartoon Little Mermaid animated one?
Mm-hmm.
That was the 90s too? Wow.
Yeah. Tarzan. Beauty and the Beast.
My fave.
Is it? I enjoy that movie too a lot. It is one of my favorites. This also being one of them. I always liked Aladdin.
That was a good one.
There's Nightmare Before Christmas.
Lutina's favorite.
A little slide and shout out to Lutina.
Lutina.
Lion King.
That was a great one.
And Pocahontas.
All great movies.
Yeah, I mean, do any of these stand out to you for a specific reason? You got one that...
They were all great. I really liked Pulp Fiction.
Classic movie.
Yeah, I like them. I like most of all the ones you said. I was like, oh yeah. Yeah.
I should mention too, because there was also a few more classic 90s cartoon movies, at least to me. I'm hoping, I'm sure others too, but in American Tail, 5 Goes West.
That was the 80s though.
Was it?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure it was the
Are you
80s.
fact checking me right now?
I'm only saying this because if it was the 90s, then no, I was much younger. Okay, so 5 was a great movie. Like that was iconic for me because my grandmother, like I love that movie, and then my grandmother lived in Beacon. And whenever we would go visit her, she had a stuffed 5 sitting on her rocking chair, and she would never let me play with it. She was always like, no, be careful. So when she passed away, or before that, I should say, they had bought me one. She bought me one for Christmas or my birthday or something, and I had it forever, and then I lost it in like my teenage years. So when she passed away, they gave me that 5 and I still have it to this very day.
That's awesome.
And that was one of my favorite. But I'm pretty sure I was much younger, and I was like, 12, 13, 14 in the 90s, but I'm pretty sure it was much younger when that happened.
You may be correct. Maybe, I mean, any listeners who wanna fact check it, go ahead and let us know. But what about?
I was a little immature for my age, but I'm hoping I wasn't that immature because I felt like I was very young when that happened.
We about to find out. What about Fern Gully? You remember that?
Not really.
No. What about a Goofy movie? That to me was a classic in the 90s for me.
I remember these movies because in the 90s I was babysitting my nephews who were younger. So a lot of the Disney movies, you know, that's why I saw them.
One of the last, I guess, animated movies that we can cover real quick, which I'm sure everybody has heard of if they haven't seen it, but Beavis and Butthead Do America.
Yeah. And The Wedding Singer, that was big for me because I had just broken up with my like high school sweetheart, like my, you know, first love, whatever you want to call it. And my friend Scott took me to this movie to make me feel better.
Nice.
I like really remember that movie.
Right on.
It was like a breakup movie. I was breaking up. So it's kind of cool.
I went through a similar situation like that one time. Not with that movie. This is totally off the topic, but I just figured throw it in there real quick. With the movie when it first was released, it was Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
That was a good one too. Yeah.
Yeah. Around that time when it first was released, I was going through a similar situation and whatnot. So like that movie to me reminds me of that time. But real quick, I want to just list the 3 top films of the 90s by worldwide box office, the ones that made the most money throughout the entire decade. I just went with the first 3 because there was a big list, but give me a guess. What do you think? A movie in the 90s that made a lot of money.
Any movie, kid.
Yeah, I mean, there's 3, but whatever. Take a guess. Take a wild guess. What do you think?
Well, I think that Pulp Fiction. I mean, I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it on. I would think that one probably did.
Pulp Fiction did make the list, but it wasn't one of the top 3.
It wasn't.
So, number 3 was Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah, Jurassic Park. That was a good one, too. I showed my kids that prematurely, I think. It's great.
Scared of dinosaurs now?
Yeah, but now they're older, a little older, so it's better. But back then it was great. Go on.
The second one was the Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And the number 1 worldwide grossing movie was Titanic.
Yeah,
of the 90s. I think the number was most of these movies were on the millions. Titanic was in the billions. So
that was a good one to see on the big screen too.
Which I mentioned many times in other shows that I think that Titanic is one of the. It's an amazing movie. I to this day still love that movie, and I think that it's one of the greatest love stories. I
remember you mentioning that before, and at the time I couldn't think of my favorite, but it was Tristan and Isolde. Right?
Yeah,
and I think that one tops.
I remember that movie.
The Titanic.
Yeah, that was a good movie too, though. But let's move on to music. All right. This music during the 90s, this is kind of maybe a broader or a bigger list, but I feel like music and definitely film and like TV in general were such a huge part of the 90s. And a lot of these things that we're about to mention are going to bring us back. They're going to bring the listeners back to a time of when these were, on air, or remembering when, they may have heard some of these songs that we mentioned. But music, real quick. Who were some of the biggest musical influences for you during the 90s? Can you think of any?
Oh, I like them all. I was into the Grateful Dead a bit. A lot of alternative, a little bit of hip hop. Mostly the Dead was more of my go-to.
Is there a specific album that still to this day like reminds you of the 90s, or if you heard it, you would be teleported straight back? Your mind would be teleported straight back to the 90s?
Not necessarily a specific album, but if I hear any Dead, it would take me right back to that part of my life. I'm thinking mid-90s, 94, 96. Yeah, you take me right back. Any Grateful Dead song would do that.
Right on. For me, it was another rock group, but a different style of rock. Still to this day, if I still listen to this album. Still to this day, this album still has one of, or I would say, my favorite song ever. Still, to this day on this album, and it's Green Day Dookie. One of the most iconic albums, I think, for the 90s. I guarantee you that album changed many kids' lives. Do you remember that album or not? Yeah. Can you think of any other musical artists that shaped the 90s?
Green Day, Linkin Park, Korn. So I listened to a lot of that in the late 90s.
Yeah.
At least for me, anyway.
Yeah. Korn, I was a huge towards oh shit. I still got some Deftones on my playlist. Still got Korn. I was a huge Korn fan in the late 90s. That was the biggest. Music to me back then was so crazy, but so split in half because it was a time of like this like new style of like, you know, harder
hardcore
metal music, like, and Korn was amazing, and but the rest of the world, or the other side of the spectrum, was into the boy band era with Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and Britney Spears.
That's right. No, we went hardcore after that.
Yeah, which, I mean, we'll mention some of those, but I mean, here's some artists. I guarantee you, like I said, if you hear some of these are going to bring people back. But Blink-182,
Blink-182,
The Offspring, Gin Blossoms, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Bush, Third Eye Blind, Smashing Pumpkins, No Doubt, Sugar Ray, Sublime, Smash Mouth, and you mentioned earlier Oasis. Little hip hop, of course, in the 90s. Dr. Dre was huge, and of course, pretty much, I feel like the whole 90s really, when it came to hip hop, focused solely on Tupac and Biggie, which was a huge part of the 90s, but also shaped the music industry for sure. 9 Inch Nails were huge. Marilyn Manson, Metallica, as you mentioned earlier, or with Korn, Limp Bizkit, Slipknot. Getting back to some of those boy bands, Backstreet Boys, Spice Girls, Hanson, NSYNC, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera. You remember all these people?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't listen to that music so much, but I know exactly. Yeah, I remember them.
There's Bare Naked Ladies. Alanis Morissette was big in the 90s. Getting back to Christina Aguilera real quick, I remember when she had like her first single or whatnot that came out all over the radio. It was really like her big first hit that kind of put her on the spot. And I was young, like I was probably in like 7th or 8th grade, so you're still a kid. But I remember hearing that song, and I remember thinking, like, I didn't even know what she looked like at the time, but I remember like immediately having like a crush solely on her voice at the time. You know what I'm saying? Now I don't know so much, but at that age, like when I heard it, it definitely drew my attention. But let's. Of course, you're familiar with Mariah Carey.
Never heard of her.
Right on. Lauryn Hill.
Yep.
Brandy. TLC. Boyz II Men. Destiny's Child. Toni Braxton. Any of these bringing back memories?
Oh yeah. Every single band you named on that list.
Yeah, and I mean those musicians are only to name a few. like I said, I know there was a lot of emphasis or a lot of musicians that I just listed off, but once again, I think the music in the 90s was so important and so impactful that it's still, I mean, it's in my opinion still better than what goes on today. But you see a lot of that music style being kind of, you know, mixed or merged with some of the new generation, you know, their
Coming
music
back
taste
in
and whatnot. Yeah, but let's you wanna talk about some 90s TV shows? This is a category that can get a little long and lengthy too, but
coming from my family. We didn't really have cable until probably the mid 90s, I would say.
Okay. Do you remember any TV shows or any that you watched in the 90s? Or
well, you know, like the Beverly Hills 90210 was always
there you go.
one that a little preppy, but you know, if I think back now, I was like, ugh.
I mean, you're right.
No, that was a very popular one. Everybody watched it.
Mm-hmm.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, of course.
Good job.
There was Law and Order came out that year.
Mm-hmm.
That I know. In Living Color. There's a lot. There was a couple of random ones that I remember that didn't last. Like I think it was like called South Central.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like that one, but I don't think it lasted but a season or two.
Right on.
Random shit.
Right on. Well, I mean, I'm sure when we go through this list, you're going to know all these and remember them. But
probably bring them back.
Yeah, so let's go back.
In the early 90s, you had that, what was that Friday night lineup? What was it called?
TGIF.
TGIF, yeah.
Yeah.
All that lineup.
Yeah. Roseanne.
Roseanne, my mother used to watch that.
Yeah. The Cosby Show.
Yep.
The Wonder Years.
Mm-hmm.
Full House. Family Matters. Charles in Charge.
Charles in Charge.
Saved by the Bell.
Yeah.
Seinfeld, which was huge in the 90s, as was one of my favorite TV shows, Friends.
Now, let me ask you this. Did you watch Friends and Seinfeld in the 90s?
I watched.
When it came out?
I watched Friends, yes. When it came out. Seinfeld, I never really got into it at all. I can honestly say the only real, like, I mean, I guess full episode that I ever watched of Seinfeld was the final episode that they had ever done. And I think, I don't remember exactly what the show was, like what it happened or what the whole topic or whatnot of the show of the final episode was, but I remember something happening where like it cut out or like the cable thing had just shut off, and it was a little issue when that had happened. But no, I didn't get into. What about you? Like Friends for me, I've always been.
Honestly, I didn't watch either one of them back in the 90s,
okay.
But when I was in my 20s, I started watching both, and I loved both of them. So.
Mm-hmm. What about Step by Step?
I used to watch that for the TGI Friday lineup, TGIF lineup. Step by Step, Family like Matters, Full House. There was another couple that came and went.
Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Yep, I've seen some of those. I didn't watch all of it, but I have seen some of those episodes.
The Wayans Brothers. Martin.
Martin was a great one.
Yeah. Hanging with Mr. Cooper.
Oh, Hanging with Mr. Cooper. Me and my brother used to watch those. Martin and Hanging with Mr. Cooper.
Sister.
That was a good one.
Boy Meets World. Which I was a huge Boy Meets World fan. And Home Improvement.
That was always good.
Yeah. There was also ER. You mentioned Beverly Hills 90210.
Wasn't the Rescue 911 in the 90s? Wasn't that a 90s show?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. Rescue 911. Baywatch, which was huge for Many reasons.
Of course.
That's every male back then, you know. But Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yeah, Power Rangers and Pokemon are both back in style.
Yeah.
Now, my kid watches it.
See,
Both
and
of them.
another thing coming back. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Do you remember that show?
That was the 90s show?
Mm-hmm.
I like that show.
So did I. I actually remember they made a computer game of that, like in the old school computers, like where you would have to put in the, I don't even know if it was a disc then or just one of those.
No, it was a disc.
The
I had it.
Yeah, and I used to love that game.
There was another game that was, I kind of feel like it was a PlayStation game. It was called You Don't Know Jack. Have you ever heard that game?
It vaguely sounds familiar.
That game was fucking, oh my God. It was a fun game. It was like a trivia, multiple choice type game.
Mhm.
But this guy berated you.
Really?
Like, I was like, fuck you. Like, you get so mad. He'd be like, all right, yeah, dummy. Or like, just something stupid. Like, and he just gets so pissed off. That's a great one.
Right on. I know these were definitely, I mean, big to me, big to many kids in the 90s. Doug, Rugrats.
Oh, yeah. I was a little older.
Yeah.
But no, my nieces and nephews watch that a lot.
Uh-huh.
Tiny Toon Adventures.
Mm-hmm. Hey Arnold,
Oh, yeah.
DuckTales, and Darkwing Duck. Once again, a long list, but music and TV once again were so big in the 90s. There were so many. I feel just like things, the creative process, the creative flow of new material has just faded and died, and it continues to slow or decrease as we move on in the future, which sucks because, like I said, I think the 90s, there were those lists are so long. So many great things back then, right?
Yeah.
Even more great things. Toys were a huge part of the 90s. I mean, like I said, I was a kid in the 90s, or a younger kid, especially in the earlier part of the 90s. So toys definitely, may have impacted me a little more than you know what I'm saying, in the 90s. But let's go down a quick little list. Can you think of any? I mean, you did mention before the Tamagotchis.
Oh, yeah, the Tamagotchis are always good. Those were the little computer animals or whatever that you killed very easily.
Yeah.
Or some of us did, I should say.
Yep, those are like literally your pocket pet that people could carry around and take care of. And rollerblades were a huge thing in the 90s.
I had a set.
Skateboards.
Yeah.
Pogs. I'm sorry.
Pogs, those are the little like cardboard or plastic, like circle-y.
Yes, those are things. So I was huge into Pogs, and crazy enough, I don't have many things from my childhood anymore, but for some reason I still have my entire collection of Pogs, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different Pogs and different, like, they used to call them slammers, the ones with weights where you would, throw them down to flip them.
I was never really into them.
Yeah, it was more or less not even playing the game. It was more or less cool to like trade different things and whatnot. But that's one thing that I've been waiting to come back to see if shit like that comes back, and I'm still waiting for that. But there were easy bake ovens. Skip It. You remember that?
Is that the one you put on your ankle and you?
Yeah.
I was trying to think of that earlier today. I'm like, I couldn't think of it, and I kept saying Bop It, but that's not the right one because that was a different toy.
Yes.
But yeah, the Skip It, that's what it was. I wanted one of those so bad, and when I finally got one, I just went out in the yard and like trying to oh, it was so fun.
Make that number climb. I remember my sister had one of them, but I used the shit out of that
Do you
too.
remember the pogo stick? Was that a 90s thing?
I think so. I might.
Sometimes I mix the 90s and the 80s.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I think it was the 90s, but I'm not sure. You did mention Bop It. Bop It was a big game in the 90s. Furbies were big. Polly Pockets.
Oh, yeah. You know, I found a Polly Pocket a couple years ago.
Did you?
Bought it. It was at a thrift store. Guess how much I paid for it?
25 cents.
Oh, my God. You guessed it.
I'm a genius.
It's great. You know me. I'm cheap.
Creepy crawlers was huge. I actually had that was a huge part of my life. I'm curious to know if any of the listeners ever used that or.
What was that again?
Creepy crawlers. It was like pretty much like a little oven, like an easy bake oven thing, but they gave you like these metal or these cast iron things where you would put like colored glue in these molds, and they would be like, you'd get molds of like maybe like snakes and like different bugs and then different, I don't know, shit that like young boys would love. And then you put it in the thing and the glue hardens, and then you have these rubber creepy crawlers, like bugs and stuff. And I remember I used to make so many of those where like I would go to school and people would like send me home with like a little list of like different ones that they would want, you know what I'm saying? And like I remember it was a huge part of my life. I remember one time somebody in school had gotten in trouble with it because they had left one of them on like a teacher's chair or something to try to scare him, and then it was a wrap after that. But that was a huge part of my life, as well as Nerf guns were huge in the 90s, and as were Super Soakers.
I was going to say the Super Soaker, I think, came out in the 90s.
I had so many great summers with friends and Super Soakers and being outside.
What about Garbage Pail Kids?
I remember that. I don't know. Was that the 90s?
It had to have been. I'm assuming. I don't think that was the 80s. I still have mine.
Do you?
Yeah, I have it hanging on my fridge. I've had it. It's Glandula Angela.
Nice, right on.
Yeah,
that's cool. All right, well, real quickly, let's move on to like some of the last categories of stuff that definitely bring people back to the 90s, and that's let's get into a few like food and drinks. All right. I know that may sound a little weird, but once we go over this list, you're going to be like, oh, damn, I forgot all about these things. You know what I'm saying?
Clear.
Good job. So food and drinks. You remember Dunkaroos?
Yes. They still have them today.
Yes. Those were huge in the 90s, though. Gushers, which they still have today, but Fruit by the Foot, Kool-Aid Bursts. Do they still have these things?
I don't know if they have the Kool-Aid Bursts anymore.
Okay. Lunchables. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Lunchables they have. They have the Fruit by Foot, whatever that is.
Yoo-hoo. Of course, they still have Yoo-hoo. Do you like Yoo-hoo?
I hate Yoo-hoo. It's literally chocolate water. Like, who likes it? One of my kids loves it. The other hates it. I'm like, it's chocolate water. You won't even use water in your hot chocolate. You use milk, but you want to drink a Yoo-hoo. I don't get it.
Is that directed towards me? Or are you talking?
No,
okay.
That's actually directed towards my kids.
Okay.
I was going on a little rant.
Okay. Because I'm actually Yoo-hoo. When I was a younger kid, like I loved Yoo-hoo. And like even still to this day, every once in a while I'll enjoy it, but like I know what it is now. So like I don't think it tastes as good, and I'm not as excited. And for some reason, every time I have it, as much as I shake it before I drink it, there's still those little floaty shits in it, and it's nasty. But
my mom used to buy it, try to pawn it off, and I was like, "What is this? There's something wrong." And I read the ingredients. It's literally water and chocolate.
Yeah. I'm the same way though with my hot chocolate. I won't drink it with water.
Me neither.
I need warmed milk.
I like it with milk.
Yeah, me too. But do you remember Shark Bites fruit snacks?
Yes.
What about Trix yogurt?
Yeah.
Butterfinger BBs?
Yes.
Fruit juice barrels.
I don't remember that.
No, I was gonna say I think they still have those.
Do they come in like
plastic little barrels of juice?
Yeah, those things are gross.
Such a
Like,
hater.
I don't really like those, like, filled candy that you, they're like, I don't know what they're called, but it's kind of like what you're saying. They have, like, little root beer ones. You know what I'm talking about?
The root beer barrel candies?
Yeah, it's similar to that, right?
No, like actual juice that you drink. It's in a plastic, like, it looks like a barrel, but that's just the container of the liquid. And then there's like red juice, orange juice, blue juice shit in it.
Yeah, they look like a grenade. That one?
Yeah, sure. Good reference. But yes, you are correct.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, those, there were fruit roll-ups, which, do they still make fruit roll-ups?
Yep.
Okay. Warheads. You remember
I think
them?
they still make them.
Okay. Here's a quick list of a few foods, drinks, whatnot, where I believe, I'm not sure, I could be wrong, but I believe they don't make these anymore. But they were a big hit in the 90s. And that was Squeeze-It drinks. Do you remember those?
No.
Okay. I do, because I used to, I remember drinking those as a kid. What about Mickey's Parade Ice Pops? They used to be the characters, like Mickey Mouse, Pluto, Don.
Yeah.
And they were red, blue, orange. But you remember those?
Vaguely.
Vaguely. What about Hi-C Ecto Cooler? It was the green.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fruitopia.
Yeah. They still make that today, too, I think. I saw that in the store.
Fruitopia?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. Melody Pops.
Never heard of it.
You don't remember those?
Yes.
That
Oh,
you-
yeah. They got the whistle pops. This
Yeah.
whistle pop. I don't
Yes.
know what it was called. And it comes with music. Those things were so cool.
Those ring pops.
You know, it had
Push pops.
gum cigarettes.
Yep. I remember. I'm glad you mentioned. Okay, so you want to know a quick little story? Kind of funny. So, you know, being young and whatnot, you think that you know everything and you think that you're pretty fucking slick, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time I got caught smoking cigarettes by my ma, and I tried to blame it. I tried to say that it was a one of those candy cigarettes or the gum cigarettes, and that didn't fare very well. So, but that shit reminded me of that. Do you remember French Toast Crunch cereal?
Yes, they were so delicious.
It was so good. I remember that. Crispy M&Ms.
Not really.
You don't remember those? They were in a blue bag, and they were crispy. They crispy shit inside. They weren't very good though.
Yeah.
This was a huge thing in the 90s. Do you remember Surge? The soda?
Yeah.
What about... Okay, so they still make Snapple, but back in the 90s, they made Snapple Earth, Snapple Fire, Snapple Sun, and Snapple Rain.
And they had really cool bottles, right?
Very cool bottles, yes.
I
Very
tried
good
collecting
marketing.
them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about Tongue Splashers gum? Do you remember that? It used to be in like a painter's thing, and it would be like a ball gum with a tongue sticking out with different colors. It was very popular gum. Oreo cereal.
Yeah. We weren't allowed to have a lot of sugary cereals. We only had, believe it or not, cornflakes and Cheerios all week, and then every once in a while we were allowed to pick out a sugary cereal.
Really? That's good for now. I agree. I'm older though too, so I try to stay away from the sugar. But I do, my cereals that are usually here, we stick to some form of, usually like of a Cheerio and Raisin Bran. I'm a big fan of Raisin Bran. Do you remember the McDonald's Arch Deluxe?
Yeah.
I remember that very well. It was so I was a kid, but I loved that. And then when they took it off and discontinued it and never made it again, I was
I was gonna say they never made it again.
Nope.
Like something's come back. That never did.
Nope. So McDonald's. Wait, I don't eat that shit anyway. I've actually gone over a year plus without eating any McDonald's. But
I hate McDonald's.
Crystal Pepsi.
Yeah.
Did you mention that? Yeah, you did. Do you remember the Soda-licious fruit snacks?
Not really.
No. All right. Well, I mean,
Did they taste like soda?
no, they were like fruity. I think it was just more or less the shape.
Gotcha.
But you know, I mean, for us, to the listeners, whoever, you know, whoever's listening, you know, if those lists didn't have you reminiscing about a younger you, then I don't know what to tell you, because I mean, we covered a lot of stuff. Those things definitely had to have brought you back at some point. Angela, you think the 90s era is shaping current trends?
Yes.
I mean, we did touch on that, but you want to expand a little more?
Well, just going to the store with my daughter. She's 11 now.
Mm-hmm.
She's just, you know, coming into like the whole, she's going to be going to middle school type thing, and like just taking her shopping, like the style of clothes kind of, like puts me right back there when I was going shopping in the 90s. Like wide leg jeans, and for some reason she's really into like the psychedelic mushroom stuff. Like, not that she's into psychedelic mushrooms by any means, but like this, like the mushroom design.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I'm like, and then now she's like, because I have a lot of my clothes are still somewhat 90s-ish.
Mm-hmm.
So she's in my room constantly taking my clothes now and taking all my shirts, and I have no clothes anymore. It's terrible.
Yeah, it is. Like, I'm sorry.
And then my son with the whole Pokemon and the everything coming. It's just like repeating.
It's weird. I mean, for us, because we've already lived through this, now to see it repeat 20 plus or so whatever years later. I mean, I think one thing that I've learned or that I think is just, you know, people are so into, I don't know, like keeping up with styles and trends, and I feel like I've seen, you know, as you get older, you just see that shit just repeats itself.
It seriously does.
So, like, I mean, I just advise anybody just to do you, be comfortable. If you want to fucking wear something that looks crazy or, you know, whatever, do whatever, that's cool. You know what I'm saying? Because eventually that's you, that makes you an individual. But eventually, as wild as it sounds, that shit's going to come around and be the norm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, shit, that was my 2 cents.
You know we haven't touched base on, that was a big thing in the 90s, was corded phones. You're right. You know? You could only go so far. I remember we had a phone in next to the back door. Mm-hmm. It had an extra long cord, so anytime you wanted to have a private conversation, you stretch that bitch. You open the back door, you stretch it around the back, outside, and hope to God that nobody was on the second line listening quietly. I remember the struggle. I think we've all been there. I got caught smoking. That's how I got caught smoking. Really? Yeah, my friend's like, "You got cigarettes?" My mom's like, "What do you mean cigarettes?" That's awesome. Good story. Good story to get this thing wrapped up. But real quick, were there any other events that you can think of that happened during the decade that you specifically remember? Anything else that you want to bring up? Or well, it was like the whole Clinton Monica Lewinsky thing. That was a big scandal when I was what was that called? Whitewater, Whitegate, White House. You know, whatever it was called. It might even not have been called any of those, but I do remember that very well. The incident or him as president? Or both? Both. Okay. Yeah. Like he became president. I was kind of a little bit on the younger side. I want to say like 13, 14. I don't really know. And but like the Monica Lewinsky thing obviously was later and very well publicized.
I was going to
so
say, definitely made news.
Yeah.
So, right on. Anything else?
O.J. Simpson.
Huge.
I don't know if we mentioned that or not.
We did not. Huge part of the 90s, the O.J. Simpson case, still referred to and talked to about today. You know what I'm saying? People have their own opinions about that whole thing, but pretty much, I mean, everyone knows the story, the whole O.J. Simpson thing, but pretty much, I mean, many people believe that he got away with murder. So, you know, that, but it is what it is.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, whether he got away with murder or not, the point is he got away with it.
Yep.
So.
You're right.
Like, by our legal system. So, we shouldn't knock it, is what I'm saying.
You're right. Anything else?
Oh, there was so much, but no, that's pretty much. I mean, there was a lot of events that happened in the 90s.
So. I have a few that I'll quickly mention real quick before we wrap up that were events that when I think about or hear about to this day, they solely make me think of the 90s. Obviously because they happened in the 90s, but I don't know, because I guess they were the biggest thing at that time, you know, like things that I was super into or whatnot. But I mean, in the 90s, we didn't really mention too much of sports, but me being a big sports fan, the New York Rangers won a Stanley Cup in the 90s, and I remember I was able to watch that and witness that, you know, and that was amazing.
Live or on TV?
Not live, on TV. But that was huge for me, and you know, being a kid. Also, when talking about the NHL, I believe in the 90s, the Mighty Ducks movie was so huge and so influential that even the NHL, that was when they made, in the 90s, they made the Anaheim Mighty Duck franchise to the NHL based off the movie, or the success of the movie, which was huge because that's never happened before. Another incident that definitely brings me back to the 90s all the time was the Columbine shooting.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Big event. I still remember to this day. I think I've mentioned it on other shows that we've done, but I remember where I was and seeing and feeling and emotions and whatnot of it. It was... So that'll always bring me back to the 90s. And the last event of the 90s, I mean, did happen. It was so big for me. Like I said, music was a huge, huge part of the 90s for me. Affected my whole childhood. And at the end of the 90s I was at such a high peak of being into the rock music, you know, and Korn and whatnot. And the last event that will always remind me of the 90s was Woodstock 99. Just with the entire lineup, the entire show, the entire festival, and how it ended, and how they pretty much...
No, you went to that?
Made national... No, I didn't. I wish I could. I wish I did. But I was still... When that happened, I was in 8th grade. So I was still a kid, but that was... If I could go back to any concert, really, that, you know, that I would have wanted to go to, like in my lifetime, would be that show, Woodstock 99, or there was a time when I was in my late 20s or early 20s. Oh man, I can't remember, but there was a concert that Eminem and Jay-Z were going to do together, but they were only going to do, I think it was 2 or 3 shows. They were going to do 3 shows in New York and 3 shows in Detroit, and that was it. And that would have been one of the shows that I would have loved to go see.
For the record, I was this close to being at that 99 Woodstock.
Really?
Yep. Broke down on the highway on the way there.
Oh man, have you watched the Woodstock '99 doc on Netflix?
No, I watched the Woodstock '69 one.
Yeah, you need to.
I don't think it was on Netflix, but
you need to watch that. That is an amazing doc. When I watched it, it brought me back, and it. Woodstock corn was such a huge part of that. And they definitely talk about that in that doc. I would recommend it too, especially if you're supposed to go there.
Yeah, we were on our way there,
time
and
of some
tire blew out, and my boyfriend at the time was like, he had to get a tow truck because it was a special car with a like sports tire, big thing.
Yeah.
I missed the whole concert. I was so pissed.
That does suck. So that would have been the biggest one of the biggest bummers of the decade.
For sure.
But all right. Is there anything else that you'd like to state or share about the 90s?
No, I mean, I'm sure I could sit here and go on for days, but I think we could wrap it up.
An amazing time, a time filled with memories. We hope that all the listeners and whatnot, that you guys were able to take a few minutes to reminisce. And go back to a simpler time. But Angela, you want to plug or shout out anything? Anything? Anyone?
Just my kids.
Okay.
My friend Messi for watching my kids.
Right on. What are your social media accounts in case fans want to get at you?
Random Ange 78 on Instagram.
All right, and you guys can always find me at Josh_Toth3. That's my Instagram, and my Facebook is Joshua Toth. Big shout out to Stellar Sound and Media and our editor, Jackson Wallace. Also, big shout out to Timber Design and Build and the whole team. If you're in the Hudson Valley and are looking for home renovations by a team that does clean, quality work, contact Chris Rawl or Jeff Wigman through Instagram, YouTube, or any other social media platforms. You guys can subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you do that, or even if you just look up Timber Design and Build on YouTube, you could see footage of the team and the jobs that have been completed. Definitely worth the time to check out those videos. Quick reminder to the It's All Relative fans, if you've liked what you've heard today, subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening from. That way you'll never miss an episode. Angela, where can they find us at?
Yes, so you want to like and subscribe. If you can, please follow It's All Relative on Apple Podcasts, Spotify for podcasters, YouTube and YouTube Music, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music.
Yes, if you guys are using Apple to listen to the show, once again, please leave a quick review and a rating. That helps us out immensely. It helps the show out. And, like we always say, we'd greatly appreciate if you could just take 30 seconds of your time and just do that. But all right, that's a wrap. Angela, thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, stay safe, stay kind, stay proud and powerful, and we'll see everyone soon. Peace.